Hey, my name is TJ. I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't had a drink or a drug since August 9th, 2016. I'm here hosting the Recovery Matters podcast with
Shawn Hemeon.
Hey, Shawn.
Also a person in long-term recovery since April 9th, 2005.
Wow, okay. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Pretty long time, huh?
I started when I was a baby.
So let's hear about your life growing up. What was that like for you?
Oh boy. I guess anybody in recovery, that can always be just such a loaded question. It's like, where to
Yes.
begin? Where's the entry point in that? I mean, the best way to sum it up is to just sort of create the chaos that, existed around me. Because I'm a middle child of seven, growing up in Northern Virginia, child in the 80s. And the fascinating part of my story is my mother was raised Mormon and was a practicing Mormon when she met my father, who was very much not a Mormon, raised Irish Catholic, but sort of not, but just really his religion really became capitalism and being a man's man and this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Somehow these two crashed together, and in the middle of that, I was produced, and so it created a little bit of unsteadiness, as an understatement, growing up, because my mom tried very hard to raise us Mormon, and my dad, we'd come home from church, and my dad would be like smoking and drinking and being like, "Get the fuck out of my rated R movie," and like making fun of the religion. So for me, I had to side with one of the parents, and it was clear, I sided with my mother. Basically, I became like her partner because my father was not very emotional. I mean, the man was exhausted. He's you try raising seven kids like financially, like he was just working all the time. And so I sided with her, but what that meant was becoming the best little Mormon boy in the world. So my formative years. Also, my mother was profoundly depressed. I mean, profoundly depressed, to the point where I had experiences where she just completely left me behind at places, and then I'd walk all the way to where she was, and she wouldn't even realize that I was gone. So it's just this whole
Mhm.
programming of I don't matter, I'm not enough, and maybe if I could make my mother happy, I would be enough. And the way I would make her happiest was by being a good little Mormon boy. So my childhood is marked with this confusion, the chaos of that many siblings, and on top of that, what's relevant here too, on top of that was my father. My mother would describe him as an alcoholic, but could never get my father to say that. But so she was obsessed with getting. She definitely she started Al-Anon way later in life, but um, my dad, she was obsessed with getting him to go to church and also not being an alcoholic. So chaos, instability, uh, creating the core belief that I am not enough because I can't make my parents happy. That's my childhood.
Okay. At what point did you transition into drugs and alcohol and like start to use drugs and alcohol?
Well, good old hormones. When
Yep.
those things come around as a teenager, they really mess shit up. They really cause chaos. Because my head is full of being the best little Mormon boy. Along comes these hormones that pull my attention from the pretty girl over there to my best friend guy over here, and I'm very confused. And when it suddenly dawns on me that, oh my goodness, God, because I truly believed in the Mormon God, God cursed me with the disease of gayness.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. What did I do to God? What did I do to him that was so bad that he would curse me with this? Totally what I believed at 13.
Yep.
And suicide was a big no-no in the Mormon church, but like I didn't know what to do, and I didn't attempt it, but like I wanted to. Like I would have been fine walking into the middle of traffic, like
Mhm.
praying to a God, who, for some kind of accident, because I was just in that amount of pain. Like it was so bad. I was 13, I also was, I'm 6'4", so I was having major growth spurts, and the doctors chalked it up for that. But I had ulcers and migraines every other week. I was tested
Wow.
for both. I missed a lot of school, but really it was this existential crisis I was going through. And there was two things that saved my life. I will say this flat out. Two things that saved my life. One was falling in love with this best friend who we ended up being an undercover relationship all through high school. But the reason that saved my life was because what I felt so pure. It felt the love I felt for him. It felt so right. Then how could this be so wrong if this felt so right? Was kind of the messaging I got from that.
Yeah.
And you guys, the first time I got drunk, I was like, what the F is this? This is, and it's funny. My brothers and I are way better now with intimacy and talking about our feelings and connecting to each other. But back then, uh, the way we expressed our love for each other was either by like punching each other, being like, "Oh, bro," that's or the eldest got the second oldest drunk for the first time. That brother got that brother drunk for the first time, and that brother got me drunk for the first time. And so it was like a bonding experience. And, outside of recovery context, outside of all of this and like normal whatever, like cute, I'm bonding with my brother. He's taking me out. I'm connecting with him, all fine. Yeah, and yes, I'm like 13, 14, but whatever. He's like 15, 16, and I'm going out with his friend and these other girls and stuff. And I just remember having like, I don't even remember what it was. It was probably like something stupid and cheap, like Paps or Milwaukee's Best, whatever,
Yep.
irrelevant. Um, but I had a beer or two and just felt that bubbly warmthy goodness, and I was like, I some dangerous words were uttered in my mind, which was, I want to feel like this all the time. Like,
Yes.
I didn't really know there was like an alternative to that, and so, um, and when I say it saved my life, I mean, yeah, it relieved me of existential, profound wanting to die angst, and so be it. And so that started in middle school, and then you can imagine the progression through high school. I left the church, and therefore my mother's good graces.
Okay.
I lived that created a world of shame for me. I fell out of favor with my mother around 15, 16. Um, you know, the Mormons love it's called seminary. It's where high schoolers should not be doing this, but high schoolers, we go to church every morning before high school. So we're in
Wow.
church at 5:36 a.m. for an hour of teaching and then going to high school. But like, in retrospect, like those are primitive years toward prime years towards a teenager growing. We need as much sleep as we can get. So it was like, you should not be getting a teenager up at 5 a.m. to go to church. Like, we paid attention. Anyway, so I was in, falling for this best friend, and I was starting to drink more on the weekends and being the cool guy, and then being Mormon, not very cool. Also, I was just falling out of that. So by the time I was in high school, I was like, peace out, Mormons. Still felt it though. Still believed I lived in a world with that Mormon God. So all 4 years of high school, I'd strive so hard to hold up this mask of popular straight guy, football jock, cool guy, cool guy, cool guy, which meant life of the party, which meant I could get the alcohol because I was tall, so I bought all the alcohol, or I got my brother and his friends to get us alcohol. I was buying cigarettes by the time I was 15. I was already
Hmm.
hooked by the time I was 15. It just it was and then all the while, behind the scenes, in the dark, my best friend and I were falling madly in love. So I had this undercover, I was a total cliche. I was football captain doing my running back, like, you know and I in a way, when I felt abandoned, rejected, and completely destroyed by the Mormon God, I picked up he became my God. And in addition, drugs and alcohol became my God,
Yeah.
basically where I found relief. So, yes, despite feeling so much profound love for him, and I do feel it was genuine, I'm a teenager and he and I are in the shadows. Nobody knows about us. No relationship could ever be like that. So we didn't have the tools to navigate what we were doing. Things got progressively worse. His home situation was so bad he lived at my home
Wow.
my junior year, which was like my lover is living with me. But that got bad because an older brother found us and he beat the shit out of me, broke his hand on my face because he was so scared of me being a faggot.
Hmm.
And and then my parents doing nothing about that, which I'm just hitting that because it just further emphasizes the amount of abandonment and shame and not enough,ness I continued to feel growing up, and especially in high school, just this, sense of loneliness. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was definitely already blacking out on alcohol. I mean,
Yep.
it was always I was definitely already hiding it. I was definitely already drinking alone. I had already started experimenting with some drugs, this, that, and the other thing, and obviously weed and that kind of stuff. But that was formidable. That was that formed my identity. I
Yeah.
was like, you can never imagine a life without it. So like, this is okay. And I had the invincibility of youth. I'm 18, 19. I'm like, my mother keeps saying, watch out, we'll be alcoholics like my father, but like that's later in life.
So all those feelings really kind of fueled the drugs and alcohol and the other situations going on in your life further, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I look at it like this. It doesn't matter what peer-to-peer program you're in. It doesn't matter even what 12-step program you're in. It could be for eating too much chocolate cake. It could be gambling, whatever. I believe, this is my belief, at the core of this is essentially this negative belief that majority of us have, which is I'm not enough, or
Hmm.
whatever version of that takes. And obviously, what's clear in my story is like I didn't feel enough, so I reached for something that made me feel better about that, which is pretty obvious. Fine, that's fine. And then I keep reaching for that thing because it feels good and makes sense. But then I start having consequences because of that thing, which create shame, and then that shame compounds that core belief I'm not enough. So then I reach for the thing again, and then I'm trapped. And that to me is a cycle of addiction.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't because I felt so shitty about myself, the consequences didn't really matter to me, at 18, 19, like they weren't clicking. There weren't
Hmm.
they I again, it was still chalked up for idiotic youth. Like it didn't the consequences just I could go to college. I could, do a job. I had personal, emotional, spiritual consequences, but all I knew was misery and grief because of how I was raised. So I didn't know any different. I was just like, I'm gonna keep reaching for this thing because it feels good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It definitely does. When did the serious consequences start to pick up?
So after my freshman year in college, that boyfriend and I, we attempted, and we were already falling apart again. And he very dramatically left me for somebody else. But really, we were falling apart. And so feeling abandoned by God yet again because he was my God. I definitely uh, had a wonderfully large display of cutting my wrists. It was one of those like if I go, I go. But I mean, it was bloody and gross and nasty, and my mother found me, and I don't know if I really wanted to go. I probably did, but really, it was just I had nowhere else to turn. I had
Hmm.
nowhere else to turn, and so once my mother found me. And I saw a therapist, a Mormon therapist, shortly thereafter, who, by the way, told me for the first time I heard from anybody, a Mormon therapist. She was like, as in the world, as in my mother, they have it wrong. You are perfectly okay the way you are. And nobody ever said that to me before, and I was
Wow.
just so blown away by that. And because of that, I was encouraged to come out to my mother. So my very Mormon mother in like 19 what am I this is early 2000s. The very first thing, she starts tearing up. She starts immediately starts crying, and she's like, "Oh my God, do you have AIDS?" She didn't say, "Oh my gosh." She just looked at me and she was like, "Do you have AIDS?" And I'm like, "No, of course that's the very first ignorant thing that you would say to me." And then she starts crying because she won't have grandchildren. And then she says, "Well, we accept you, but not the lifestyle. And lifestyle is Christian code for gay sex."
Yep.
So that didn't work out. I felt completely abandoned by her yet again, and my dad just wouldn't talk about it. And so my family, f them, they mean nothing to me. I'm gonna go downtown to the DC gay scene, club scene, and oh boy, ooh, these boys really like me. Oh boy, look at this. I feel wonderful. Like, oh, let me go dance on a box, and they're giving me free drugs and they're giving me free alcohol. Like, this is amazing.
Hmm.
I can come here and get wasted for free and really high on cocaine or whatever, list all the drugs. And so I was like, cool, DC is my place for now on the weekends. And then I was also at theater school. So DC is 10 minutes from where I grew up in Northern Virginia. And then I went to VCU in Richmond, which was 90 miles south. And I went to theater school because, I started acting in high school and it was something in it. I should say this, I jokingly said, but truthfully, alcohol and this relationship with this young man saved my life because it provided that relief for me. On a more positive note, I discovered acting in eighth grade. It also saved my life because it also provided me that sense of relief. Like, oh, what is this thing? This is fascinating. Like, I want to get into this. I want to feel like this all the time,
Yeah.
being on stage and performing and having people laugh and really. So, like, there were other things reinforcing this. It's just the alcohol and the drugs,
Hmm.
had a much stronger ability to get the dopamine doors open and pump that down versus like having to work for the applause. Anyway, so I went to theater school and I started commuting between um, the nightclubs in DC and theater school. And just to get into this really quickly, I met a drug dealer who was a
Okay.
meth dealer, and I had experimented with meth by that point, but now I was dating the drug dealer and talk about feeling special because he was like the dealer. And so I was very captivated by the thrill of being in the underbelly of society and the world there. It was not, it just was so exciting and it made my life like have some sort of purpose because it was like now I know the real truth of how human beings are is weird thinking, but it was so thrilling because he was introducing me to like the most drugs I've ever seen, but then also these suppliers, and it was like the movie. So it was like, cool. I'm young. I'll date him for a short time,
Hmm.
experience this and get out um, was the lie I told myself. And also, the lie of, I want to feel like this all the time and I'll quit when I'll quit in, a short time.
Yeah.
None of that was true. It progressed incredibly fast as meth tends to do. Um, it went from the rule of not past the weekends to um, doing it past the weekends, but not missing any school classes to missing school classes. I mean, I had a theater director literally look at me and say, "You are never working in this town or this theater or for me ever again," because she was so pissed off at my attendance and attitude and everything. Anyway, it progressed to the point where this, I decided this boyfriend was terrible at dealing. And after a fight, I said, I can do it better than you. Okay. Who says that? But I was also just deeply, obviously the addiction was increasing,
Hmm.
but I also was like, becoming even more enthralled with this life and the story of it. Like it just was like my life had no meaning. Suddenly this is happening to me. This has, as effed up as it is, has profound meaning. And so um, I set out to prove him wrong. I set out to be a dealer in Richmond and then in DC. It wasn't a lot, it was very little, but I proved him wrong. I stole all of his clients and I was like, great, I'm getting out of this. A bunch of consequences started adding up, like crashing cars, fist fights. But it didn't stop me. And so on the weekend where I was like, I'm done, I'm getting out, really having a moment of clarity of like, this is crazy. I was arrested
Wow.
and, and the Fed, since this is DC, it's automatically charged federal, and so the DC, so federal agents interrogating me wanted to flip me into being an informant, and um, I played dumb, and they were not idiots, and they were in so many words saying to me like, "Listen, you want to, not go to jail for 10 plus years, you gotta give us some intel." And again, they were not dumb, they knew what I was doing, so I in so many words was saying like, well, I have to deal, I didn't say it exactly like this, but I said I have to deal on much larger amounts to reach the kind of intel you guys need. And they, in so many words, the federal government said, yes, keep dealing, but keep dealing a lot more and get us the intel that we need. And I had seen enough movies where I was like, I'm not a rat. So I was determined not to like rat on anybody. But at the same time, I had this conflict of like, in 6 months was going to be my sentencing. And do I go to prison for not ratting? Do I make up like, what do I do? You know? And so, uh, my addiction was very happy with increasing my status as a dealer, if you will. And so trying to find ways to, sell larger and larger amounts of drugs. And I did. And then I started having to traffic through the airports to speed up the process and get it in other places. DC people were afraid to deal with me until they weren't. I'm sort of going through this part of the story quickly because this is
Hmm.
all in the memoir, but I'm going to hit some points and then we're going to end that part. But what some important points. What ultimately the every consequence that I thought would never happen to me absolutely happened to me.
Yep.
Did I have sex for drug money? Absolutely. Did I crash a car? Absolutely. Did I, towards the end, work with the Russian mafia and get threatened? My life was threatened. Absolutely. Did he put the gun in my face multiple times? Absolutely. Did somebody OD because I failed to act? I failed to act it was too late by the time I acted to help save this person. Yes. Did his mother call me 2 weeks later because I was the last number he called, begging to know what happened? And did I think in my paranoid mind that she was some cop trying to get a confession out of me? Yes. That's my biggest regret. All the consequences could happen to me, except now there's this grieving mother out there who just wants to know what happened to her son. So when I got to my sentencing, I felt I deserved to go because of what happened to this young man, the mother calling me,
Hmm.
this murderous Russian mafia guy was after me. And but when I got to my sentencing, my case was dismissed. I did not tell them anything. One time I made up information, but it was stupid and bogus. I have no idea to this day why my case was dismissed. Um, and I had to live with that. But you'd think that would be the end. I lasted 6 more weeks out there.
Wow.
6 more weeks out there. With some bogus excuses that I needed to. Well, the mafia guy, the Russian guy, was now threatening my friend, so I was like, okay, I need to make more money to pay him off to save my friend. What it did, I just wanted to keep using.
Hmm.
And then on my 23rd birthday, September 26, 2004, I made the call to my mother, my parents, and they came and got me. There's a
Wow.
whole story around that as well, but that's just getting me to recovery. And then a few weeks later, I started a 28-day program, a treatment program in Northern Virginia, and then I did an outpatient program at the Whitman Walker Clinic.
Okay.
And then it's April 9th because I'm laughing because it's stupid, but it's true. I went into a halfway house, and I in the gay scene, folks love poppers, which are fine.
Yes.
There's a divided line between people in recovery if like this is okay, not okay. You define your recovery, no judgment there.
Hmm.
But prior to that, for me, worse than that to me was like dust off. I loved inhalants, like especially even before the DC the gay scene. Like I was a kid experimenting with that stuff. Like so that hit me. So when I walked into the halfway house, I've never said this on a podcast before. This is funny. When I walked into the halfway house, the first thing I saw, this is a halfway house for drug and alcohol. The first thing I saw was a can of dust off on the VCR. And I see it and I go, well, I guess I'm supposed to use it. I didn't see the big deal. I don't know what I was thinking. And then I told my the supervisor like the next day, and he was like, "Oh, well, okay, we're kicking you out of the house, and you have to start your day count over." And I was blindsided. I mean, I was furious. I was like, "What the?" I mean, I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of that. It just, and then I was so resentful at him. I was like, "Okay, fine. If I have to start my day count over, then I'm gonna go use. I'm gonna show you what that's like." And so I went out that night and. I did a little meth, I think, and a little GHB, which was a drug I did a lot, like daily back.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember sitting there, and I was just not, I couldn't feel high, and I just was like, I don't belong here. And I stood up, and I got in the car and drove away, and that was it.
Wow. Where'd you go?
Back to my parents in Northern Virginia. I was in DC at a friend I used to use with, and then I mean, just to put some context there, by the time I got sober, I hadn't drawn a sober breath in a year and a half. By the time I finished, I was smoking the last 6 months, 7 months, I was smoking meth. So I was smoking at least an 8 ball a day. That's like $400 or $500. And then I was doing GHB every few hours, which is in the straight scene, it's a date rape drug. In the gay scene, it's a dancing sex drug that makes you feel like you're really drunk.
Yep.
And I was doing that to feel happy. If the meth was the baseline, and then if I really wanted to party, I would take a bunch of pills of. They call it Molly now. I sound like ancient saying it like that, but so just the party drugs, you know.
Yeah.
I, and this is the last part of the story, and then we can move on. I do remember in the middle of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I randomly saw a friend from high school that I was still connected to. And I was so proud to share with him that, like, hey, I haven't had any alcohol in 6 months. Did I tell him I was on GHB every 2 hours? And if you mix the two, it's lethal. I mean, by the way, that's how the young man OD'd. He mixed alcohol and GHB. But
Wow.
did I tell him that part? No. So, and when I did get sober, I tried to find the mother. I tried to find her. I could not find her. I could not find her. And then recently, when I had always wanted to write the memoir around this, especially as an amends to her.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I tried to find her and I couldn't find her. So I wrote that. I wrote the memoir, The Good Little Drug Lord, mostly as an amends to her. Like maybe one day she'll find it. Somebody will find her and she can read about what happened to her son.
Yeah. Tell me about your recovery process. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, when you start the 28-day treatment, not all places nowadays, but back then you went to rehab, on your very first day, they took you to a 12-step meeting. On the second day, it was just, I mean, I'm sure they still do that, but not all places, I think, as I'm learning, do that, So they immediately took me to a 12-step meeting, and I subscribed to it I knew of AA because I got suspended for drinking alcohol in high school at 15. And so I had to go to AA meetings. And I remember being 15, smoking in a church basement with other crotchety men talking about, very, you know how back in the day,
Yep.
12-stepper men are just like very like, so I knew of it, and I was able to convince myself at that moment to stop drinking in order to stop doing meth. And I was like, cool. That's how I started the path. But then as I got into recovery more and more, I was like, oh no. It's like, dude, you were an alcoholic. Like it just all came into place and understanding it. And so I was, and then within a few months, I started going to 2 meetings a day. And then at the end of my like 9 months in, I moved to Los Angeles. I had the best outpatient counselor in the world because he was like, listen, you did not get sober to sit on the sidelines. That's just bullshit. You meant, it does say in the AA big book, like it's meant to be a bridge back to life. And I think recovery in general, aside just from coming from the big book, is why else would we do it? Why else would we do it? And so I was like, yeah, he's right. Okay, cool. And I came to LA. Turns out LA has some of the best recovery in the world. And the pandemic has us on Zoom now, so people can actually experience that. But like I lucked out. And on one of my very first meetings landing in LA, I sit down in a meeting and then I turn to my right and I'm sitting right next to the lead singer, one of my all-time favorite bands. And he's like, hey man, what's up? And I'm just like,
Wow.
Okay. And I don't even remember what he was saying to me, but it was recovery related. I just remember feeling like, oh, I'm in the right place. And that really validated that for me. So, so I came to LA to pursue acting, but I was such a shell of a human that really those first 5 years was just solely focused on recovery.
Wow.
Some people say they come to recovery to rebuild and stuff. There was nothing to rebuild. I never built anything. Like it was just decimation from childhood onward. So it was like I was building. And I'll share this story because this was a major pivot in my recovery. again, I came here, we do recovery not to sit on the sidelines, go out there in life. Great. That's what I'm thinking. And then I get to a meeting and there's this big bear of a man. He's the main speaker, and I mean, full beard, big, like big bear of a man. And he's like sobbing. He's sobbing because of the amount of gratitude that he is feeling. Like he's just overwhelmed with gratitude for being sober. And he was telling us that his sister is still in active addiction and she was selling her 4 and 6 year old for drug money.
Wow.
And he was so profoundly grateful that he was sober because he was able to adopt those boys.
That's awesome.
And I remember listening to this, and I remember first I said, "Oh, I'm a piece of shit." And then I said, and then it really dawned on me that I didn't get sober, not to just not only sit on the sidelines, but there's a reason why I'm sober. There is a greater purpose. There is a higher purpose. There is, if it's being an act of service, then so be it. But there is more to this than I ever even really could have seen. It made sense. It made my recovery make sense. It was like, oh, we're meant to be this. We're meant to do this and move through the world in that way. And so, and that was maybe also my first year of coming there. And so that's just been, and then through the years, continuing to do the recovery in every way, whatever self-help book I can get my hands on, whether 12 steps, whatever therapy modalities, and then trying to open my mind past the 12 steps, not keeping that so rigid, and like, what else is out here? What's my spirituality? How does that develop? And then I don't know how much time we have, but I can tell a story about my mother.
Please do.
As it turns out, the more recovery I got, the more painful it was to be around her. My mother in the early recovery days, we drove out cross country together. She was my best friend. I mean, she was my best friend as a child too, which wasn't wasn't the most healthy thing, because like my father being unemotional, she leaned on me emotionally, and I gave her myself. I gave her all of me, and I beat all my siblings out. I won my mother, and when they got divorced in 2008, I was the first person she told. So it was a little like, but also in 2008, when she divorced him, she came out to California and we were having the vote on Prop 8 on gay marriage. And she, still being Mormon, still is Mormon today, just looked me in the face and was like, well, yes, I'm voting on that, like very matter of factly. And I just looked at her and I said, you just said you don't think I should ever be married to the person I love.
Wow.
And it continued to get painful, because I mean, I knew I was always competing with the Mormons growing up. I always blamed the Mormons, but then I slowly realized it's not the Mormons, it's her. I don't know what to do with this. And so, you know, what's harder than getting off meth is never talking to your mother again.
Yeah.
Is leaving her. I was living with my youngest brother by that point, and he's a beautiful young man, spiritually inclined, and we really, bonded. And for his own reasons, and the way outside of the Mormon stuff, she ruled with judgment and shame. And so even outside of my sexuality, it still was hard to be around her. So combined, we were like, peace out,
Yeah.
And we didn't meet. It just came down to that after one Thanksgiving, and I grieved her as if she was passed. And we were going to do this with, in her presence, slowly detach with her as this mother figure, not allowing her to mother us anymore. But it was the hardest thing I had ever done. And it rocked my family, because, families are like, people think they're like the mafia, like we're the same blood. What do you mean you don't leave? People take it for granted. It's like, no, do not take your family or whatever situation for granted. You always have a choice to leave. And my siblings and I, we just didn't know how to communicate. We were not intimate. We were not what we could have, our best selves. And so having the choice to leave now changed everything. And so, but at the start of the pandemic, or right before then, life events with my siblings put me in the same rooms with my mom. And so a few words were uttered here and there. And suddenly I realized that I was meeting her on my terms. She had a completely different respect for us. And so it's like, okay, I can slowly bring her back into my life. And this is the point I wanted to get to. At the start of the pandemic, my boyfriend, now husband, wanted to meet her, and I was like, fine. And so I brought her to where it's like, fine. She lived in she eventually landed in southern Utah, and so I brought him there to meet her. Yeah, she lives near Zion, so we went hiking and stuff. And I thought I was like over her. I was like, this is my mom, meet her, this is great. But she was saying things that triggered me, and I just couldn't believe it. And then he very just nonchalantly was like, well, why don't you just forgive her? And I'm like, fuck you. Do you know what she did? Do you know just do, like it's so easy as that. He's like, well, you didn't talk to her, you did all this work supposedly. And I was like, God damn it. And he was right. He was right that I even doing all the recovery work, even doing all the processing, even doing all there was still like a habit of reacting to her that needed to be dealt with. And so I said in my mind while I was with her with the rest of the trip, in my mind, like, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. And either as a result of that or through her own evolution. But on the last day, she this is actually in the book. This is in the last chapter. But she asked to talk to me alone and brought me into the next room. And she was like, "Listen, I was just inspired to do this thing, and I'm hoping you'll do it." And I was like, "Okay." And so she sat me down on the love seat. Again, I'm 6'4". She's probably 5'10" or whatever. She's tall for a woman, but still. She's like, I just want you to put your head on my lap. I'm like, okay. So I scrunch up on the little love seat and I put my head on her lap and she starts petting my hair and I'm so uncomfortable. And she's like, I just want to talk to that 4-year-old. It was 4 years old when I was abandoned and I got the messaging that I don't matter. She's like, I just want to talk to that 4-year-old and tell him how unfair his life was and how hard it was. And I just want him to know I'm so sorry. And I want the 13-year-old to know that. She just started apologizing and I could hear her crying. And then
Mm-hmm.
I thought I worked so hard to not need this moment anymore because I wanted it my whole life and I was never going to get it. So I worked so hard to let it go. And then here I was getting it. Maybe I got it after I truly let it go, but when I was hearing it, I really needed to hear it. And she just teared up and cried and just said how much she loved me and she was just so sorry. And I
Wow.
could feel that she changed. I could feel that she changed to the point where in 2023, when now again, my boyfriend and I were getting my fiance were getting married, she genuinely was so thrilled and so happy to walk me down the aisle.
Wow.
Now, between you, me, and this podcast, whatever Jedi mind trick, she's still practicing Mormons. I don't think she's going to listen to this. Maybe she will. But whatever Jedi mind trick she's doing to sort of like compartmentalize her religion, I don't know what she's doing, but you could feel her genuine happiness. Like she loves my husband more than me. Like, like but the point of course is just people change, people evolve, and I do not think I would be here at all without my recovery. 20 years later, I still say it's the best decision I ever made. If in fact I actually made that decision myself, I do believe in, higher power and how it unfolds. And, there are so many miracles or like what in my story overall that it just feels like the hand of whatever you want to call it, a guardian angel, fine. You can
Mm-hmm.
call it God or whatever. There's just the hand of that, just very much. I do believe like there is a purpose. If there is a purpose to addictions, if there's just one purpose, it's to just get us to this faster, to get us to this connection to some sort of, it doesn't even have to believe a belief in God, but some sort of sense of like we are souls in a human body trying to connect to each other. And that's
Yeah.
like that has to be our greater purpose. And so if an addiction gets me there faster, great.
You mentioned your memoir and your book coming out. When is that coming out and how do we get it?
Great question, because I want to know the answer to that too. No, the journey of the memoir has been 20 years in the making, if you will. The
Yeah.
second I got sober, I kept a journal throughout the entire experience. I kept a journal in high school. And so I've always kind of been a writer. And I going through, especially the end of the story, like literally many times I was like, this is a movie. Like I felt the cinematic nature of this story. So I knew someday I'd be retelling this. And in my first 10 years of recovery, I held on to that story like a masturbatory glory piece. You know, anybody would share like, this is what happened to me. I'd always be like, oh yeah, look what happened to me. But I was still a shell of a human. And like this gave me validation and purpose. And I needed to get past that. And then the last 10 years, nobody's heard my story. It is so past all that, beyond all that. But at the same time, I needed my skill set as a writer to get to the place it needed to be. But also, I did not know I needed that ending that I shared with you, with my mother,
Yep.
with her walking me down the aisle, and then finishing, and then also as a consequence of drugs and alcohol, I did not finish my college degree. So during the pandemic, I went back to UVA, not back to, I went to UVA online, which was a great, thing to come from the pandemic. And then they had it available online, started the memoir in there. I was like, oh, it's time. And so I spent 2 years writing it and getting it prepared to take it out. Currently, it's in talks with agents and publishers, and um, uh, we do not have a publication date yet. I don't want
Okay.
to say, I have ideas, but I don't want to say that and then it'd be like another 6 months beyond that. And
Yep.
so, the best thing that people can do if they, are so enthralled by this story and want to get all the juicy details of it, is to just follow me on Instagram, because on there, I post everything. I mean, yeah, I ended up having, a little success as an actor, which is exciting. Not near as much success as I am about to have in these next couple of years. Let me just declare that to the universe.
Okay.
Uh, and also a lot of my trauma has been processed through art, and
Wow.
I'm a abstract expressionist painter and I've been doing that for the last 10 or 12 years. So you can see my art on there, go to my website. So anyway, to keep up to date with the memoir, but also all things happening in my world, just follow me on Instagram is the best way, or sign up for my newsletter. But Instagram is the best. And I'm sure you'll put that in the notes.
Yeah, we will put that. We'll put that when we share it on all social medias. We'll put that in for sure. What is your Instagram?
It's my name, so it's at Shawn Hemeon.
Perfect. If you were talking to somebody in their first 24 hours of recovery right now, what do you think the best piece of advice or support you can give them is?
Congratulations, you just made the hardest choice you will ever make in your life. These next 24 hours is going to be minute by minute. You are absolutely not alone. Here is my phone number, or would you like me to sit with you for these next 24 hours?
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much.
I mean, that's the truth. I mean, if
Yeah.
a newcomer called me and they were like, I don't know what to like, that's
No.
the secret sauce, as you know, peer to peer or peer to peer or Dr. Bob Bill Wilson. It was that connection. That's the
Yep.
secret sauce.
I really, really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your recovery story. Good luck getting the
Yeah.
book out there.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.